provide housing for people of all different types along Main Street. One of the projects that we're talking about right now may actually have a mixed resident type situation in it. And I disagree with Mr. Clausius that we haven't done anything on Main Street. I think you're going to see some of the fruits of that labor pay a lot of dividend. You might have heard recently about the sale of the Hanley property. It wasn't because somebody just wanted to own a bunch of dirt and old buildings. It's because they wanted to do something with it. And so we continue to work on various strategic sites, no different than we did on the west side of Sun Prairie. We identified things that were going to be traffic drivers and drivers of other businesses to come to that area. We incentivize those people to come there. We'll do the same thing on Main Street because that's what brings critical mass in terms of traffic volume, and I don't mean that in terms of cars, I mean that in all types of customers. So we will do some of the same things. Certainly that area is a little bit behind the west side in terms of when we started. Again, we redid that TIF district actually, and it just finished in December. We had one there for some time that was right before the recession, and the value of all those properties went down, reduced what we could do there. And so we've taken some steps. We continue to work with developers to try and bring some improvements to many of those businesses. And you know, I think those are the types of things that we can do to, again, provide more ways for everybody to participate in the economy here in Sun Prairie.
Sort of on the same subject, speaking about Main Street, I think that a big part of having a community feel to a town like Sun Prairie is having those local, smaller businesses. How are we gonna, in the future, continue to be able to support those smaller businesses if it seems like the city is bringing in as many big box sort of stores as they can? How do we keep the smaller businesses competitive for that?
Well, we're not going to put a big box on Main Street, certainly. I guess the city, I think all of us would agree, the big box are more regional retailers. They're not simply community retailers. That we're talking about perhaps more specialty shops, smaller markets. I think the neighborhoods will be, just by convenience sake, will be willing to patronize those businesses. The Century Store was successful for so many years because people in that neighborhood walked to the Century Store to get their groceries, and it became more of a community center. I'd like to see that return. If you don't pay attention to the core of your city, the neighborhoods will start to fail too, and that is not a good thing for any of us. You don't want to have, like some of the bigger cities where the central core deteriorates and the outer edges are successful. So that's my concern. It's a social concern as well as a development concern too for the central core. I realize the city spent a lot of money repaving Main Street. That's a good start, but again, and it's great that Mr. Freund talks about the Hanley property being sold, but my point is you need to have a strategic plan. You can't do this piecemeal. It's not going to be a cohesive neighborhood if you do it, you know, a thrift store here and a used car lot there and a nice beautiful building that houses people over there. You have to have it put together nicely in a planned fashion. So I think the neighborhoods will support those little businesses. Yeah, they have to be the right businesses, but we're not going to build Best Buy down in the center of town.
Well, that's a good question. The city has done, I think it's 5 studies on the West Main Street corridor. And you can see the results of all those studies. It's just difficult. When you go to the far west side and you've got raw land, it's easy for somebody to come in with the proper zoning and the proper financing to build something because there's not a lot of hindrance. But when you're in an area that has been developed and now you want to come in and do something new, you've got to collect the parcels that you want to do, but you've got things on those parcels, buildings, and you've got to get rid of those buildings. So you've got more cost into that. So maybe it's an aspect that the city needs to be more aggressive in there. Like they did in the downtown where they went in and actually bought some of that property and prepared it for somebody to develop on. That may be one of the aspects of it. You've got a lot of issues going on West Main Street with a lot of curb cuts, so you've got a lot of in and out traffic potential that you've got to clean up. You've got buildings set in on their sites at different points. So as you go down Main Street, if you just visualize it as I'm talking, you're going down Main Street, some are right up onto the sidewalk, some are set back in. So it's difficult to put all those pieces together and get a cohesive thing. The Handley property, where you've got a sizable piece of property, you could do that and then do something that's creative on that. Maybe that's gonna be the spark that gets it going. And maybe Paul's Bar is another site where you've got a fair amount of space and you've got a lot of visibility on the corner. Maybe that's one where something will happen. I think the pieces are there. I think we've studied it, so we generally know what the pitfalls and the problems are. And at some point, we've just got to encourage those people that have a vision that can come in and do something with those properties. And if it means we need to be more aggressive as the city, then I think we're going to have to do that.
To your question in terms of how you compete with big box, look, there's going to be some types of businesses that small mom and pops aren't going to compete with. It's just a cost difference in terms of where you buy things. But I think that there's a tremendous number of places that local businesses can very definitely do well. If you look at the downtown as one example, one thing I would tell you is that what we did there was we brought density to downtown, which means more people living there so that it's a more livable, walkable, bikeable community. And then you get businesses that are then able to be supported because there's more people there to patronize them. So a lot of those same strategies, and I can't totally divulge what we're looking at on the Handley property, but I would tell you that we're going to start and then block one side or the other of Bird Street, and we're going to create density in that area because that's the only way you can bring mixed use and some of the things that you actually are suggesting is to create density so people can patronize those businesses and not go a long ways and have to drive there, those types of things. Certainly you want to make them accessible. You are going to have different chain stores or different convenience type stores. Thinking, for a long time, CVS has talked about coming to Sun Prairie. You're going to get some of those types of players along Main Street because you need to have the traffic driven to that area, but you need to create density. That's what competes against more regional plays like big box stores. People will drive there, they'll bike there, they'll go do their shopping there for some things, but for convenience sake, if they live in that area, they're going to shop in that area. So that's one answer. We're going to maybe come back to this TIF 11 thing quite a bit. I mean, I think you, Mr. Esser, actually cited there's been a number of plans in terms of what we do on Main Street. Do we have to continue to adapt those plans? We need to bring things closer to the road because it creates a sense of, a better sense of place and a better sense of how do you create a lot of activity in along that corridor. It's by bringing those buildings up close to the street, and those are elements that we'll take of our current plan. I just actually in 2015 budget put in another position in economic development to do many of those things. It's marketing that Main Street area to more than just we're not out recruiting more big box stores at this point. We had to have the nucleus of traffic generators in order to make certain areas accessible and successful. Once you've done that, you actually see a lot of those other smaller businesses build in and around that area. Shops at Prairie Lakes is a great example. Those are all going to be smaller businesses that are in there. And I'll tell you what, I mean, go try and find a parking place in many of those spots. Go and try and, we were just out there the other night, the lines and things of that nature. You have to have a mix. And so I guess what I'm telling you is we need to have a balance, we need to have density, and we continue to work on that.
So one thing I would ask of each of the three of you, no matter what the results of the election are, is Main Street is not very bicycle friendly till you get out past the 151. So we would, as a group love to have downtown Sun Prairie all the way out to the shops and to the west side development to be more bicycle friendly, and right now it's far from it. So just, that's a comment and a request to the three of you. Who's next? So, well, I'll ask a couple. How can the city and the school district work better together to encourage kids to ride their bikes to school?
I'm in the Sun Prairie Lions Club. I've been a member for 12, 14 years. And one of the programs I've been involved in is called Bike Rodeo. And it, in the old days, many of the elementary schools participated. And now we're down to the generous provision of space at Bird School. But we have all sorts of kids and many age groups come. We have a little obstacle course. They have little tests that they take. But basically it's to make sure that they're bicycle proficient. To me, that was a good situation with, it's a community organization. It used to be run by the police department, and they were not able to do it anymore, so the Lions Club took it over. But the point is that kind of a program where kids are encouraged to practice on their bicycles and to learn how to ride them safely, and then go through this test, win a few prizes, a bicycle helmet, and one, I think we even give away a couple of bicycles that are donated, some from Trek, some from other vendors. There's a couple of guys from Trek always there that repair the bikes if they need to be fixed. But to me, that's the nature of a little program that really encourages children to ride bicycles and understand that it's a good part of their life to get around. I know that's what I did when I was a kid. I lived on the south side of Richland Center, and the park was on the north side, and I rode my bike to go to that park. So I traveled around a lot until I was old enough to drive a car. So seriously, they were all Schwinns though.
Well, safe bike routes, that's what it's going to take to move people around and move kids around through the city. You get there by planning. You start and you look at the city, you see where the activity areas are and where the people are, and you figure out routes to match them up. And then you engineer those routes so that they're safe. That's the Eden Prairie model. That's what they've done. It's the same thing we do here. So it starts by getting community input, getting professional analysis of what could be done, putting them together, and then we create a plan to develop that in the community. Part of it is, as John suggested before, as we do redo streets in the city, that we build them so that they're safe routes. As they're new streets, because they're new subdivisions coming into the city, we design them with those uses in mind. And then, like we have done with the sidewalks in Sun Prairie, where we had areas with no sidewalks and we've come back in and retrofitted sidewalks in there, we need to do the same thing with the streets over time. It's an investment, but it's part of the investment in the quality of this community. So the way you get kids to bike to school is you give them safe routes.
Couple things to add there. I agree. One of the things that the school has to encourage is, one, proficiency in the younger grades. I think one of the things you, Sarah, is interested in that could encourage people to ride bikes more is give kids more outlets that they may be interested in, and encourage them to start mountain biking, as an example. I suspect if they took up some of the clubs and activities in terms of mountain biking, they're more apt to be riding their bicycle all over the city. Certainly routes are important, and we continue to take a look at that. But really, it's probably the most thorny issue with this is, and the communities come down on both sides of this. It's one of the things that I think is going to be a barrier is we continue to shorten the amount of the distance that kids can live from school and get busing. If you continue to shorten that, kids are going to walk, right? You're going to have less kids that are going to be willing to ride their bike because they can simply get on a bus. I'm not going to take a position that that's good, bad, or indifferent, but I think that affects the number of kids that would bike to school on a more regular basis. But again, I'm not sure that I or anyone else in the city are gonna take a position on how far you should bus kids. I think it's a safety issue, there's many other